The smell of roses and damp soil was how my mornings always began. My little flower shop sat at the corner of Pinecrest Lane, where the pavement cracked and the wind carried the soft hum of early traffic. I liked it that way, quiet, familiar, predictable. After my husband passed, flowers became my way of speaking when I no longer had words. Every petal felt like a prayer. People often said I was too gentle for this world. Maybe they were right. I found peace in small things. The sound of the kettle whistling, the clink of my watering can, the way sunlight filtered through the glass jars of daisies on my windowsill. The neighborhood wasn't fancy, but it had a heartbeat. Every face was one I knew, and every voice carried a greeting. Until Mrs. Greaves arrived. She moved in across the street that spring. Her car was loud, her perfume stronger. The first time I met her, she smiled without her eyes. "So you're the widow who runs that shop," she said. I nodded, unsure if it was a question or a statement. From that moment, I sensed a shadow stretch over my quiet world. At first, the whispers were small. Someone mentioned they'd heard I couldn't pay my bills. Another hinted my husband hadn't left me anything, that I'd sold his belongings for money. I ignored them. People talk. But soon the smiles around me grew thinner, the greetings shorter. When customers entered my shop, I saw the hesitation in their eyes, as if they wondered what kind of woman I really was. One evening while closing up, I overheard two women outside. "Poor thing," one said. "I heard she's been seeing married men. Imagine hiding behind flowers." I froze behind the counter. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the vase. I wanted to rush out and shout, "That's not true." But my late husband used to say, "Amara, silence has its own power." So I stayed silent, focused on kindness. I still carried tea to Mr. Hunt, the retired teacher next door. I still left biscuits for the children who passed by after school. But silence, I learned, can be mistaken for guilt. A week later, I noticed Mrs. Greaves standing by her window, phone pressed to her ear, watching me as I loaded flower boxes into my van. Her lips curved in a faint smirk. That evening I sat by my window, staring at the small black camera above my doorway, one my husband installed years ago. It blinked faintly, still alive, still watching. I whispered to the empty room, "Maybe you were right, Elias. Maybe some truths record themselves." The next month crawled like a slow ache. My shop sales fell. Children stopped waving at me. The neighbors who once brought me pies now crossed to the other side of the street. I tried to keep my chin up, but even kindness feels heavy when no one believes in it anymore. Mrs. Greaves seemed to feed on attention. I'd hear her laughter drift across the road as visitors came and went. Once she stopped by my shop, pretending concern. "You poor dear," she said, scanning the wilted tulips. "People can be cruel, can't they? But then again, rumors don't start without reason." Her words stung more than I let on. I smiled politely and said, "Flowers don't choose where they bloom, Mrs. Greaves. They just do." She blinked, clearly not expecting that, and left with a forced smile. That night, rain began to fall. Steady, relentless. I stayed late arranging bouquets for an anniversary order. When I stepped outside, I saw muddy footprints leading to the back wall of my shop. I followed them, the air cold and wet against my skin. There, scrawled in dripping red paint, were the words, "Liar, fraud, homewrecker." For a long moment I just stared. The rain blurred the letters but couldn't wash them away. My throat tightened. Tears mixed with the rain until I couldn't tell the difference. I wanted to scream, but all I managed was a whisper. "Why me?" The next morning, the graffiti drew a crowd. Some neighbors gasped in pity. Others whispered behind cupped hands. Mrs. Greaves stood among them, arms folded, eyes gleaming with false concern. "Oh, how terrible," she said. "Imagine someone doing that to her." But then again, who knows what provoked it? That sentence snapped something inside me. I went home, locked my door, and turned to the small monitor connected to the old security cameras. The footage flickered, grainy but clear enough. I rewound through the night, frame by frame, until movement appeared. Two figures, hooded, laughing as they sprayed the wall. I leaned closer. One of them turned slightly toward the camera, light catching his face for a split second. It was a boy, barely 20, one I'd seen before, helping Mrs. Greaves with her groceries. Her son. I sat back, trembling. My heart broke, not just from the cruelty but from the weight of what it meant. She hadn't just ruined my reputation. She'd raised her son to help her do it. That night I didn't sleep. I thought about confronting her, about showing the footage to the police. But every time I closed my eyes I saw my husband's calm face, the way he used to say, "The right truth blooms at the right season." By morning I'd decided I would wait. But waiting had its own cost, and I could already feel it tightening around me like a storm cloud waiting to break. Days passed in uneasy silence. I scrubbed the wall clean, though faint stains remained like scars. Business slowed to a trickle. The few customers who came spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting between me and the door. Then, one afternoon as I swept the shop floor, an envelope slid under the door. Plain paper, no name. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single sheet. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it would go this far. I can't undo it, but you deserve to know the truth. Ask the man across the street. He's been watching everything." My heart pounded. I turned toward the window. Across the street stood a narrow house with faded blue curtains. Behind them I caught a glimpse of movement, an older man in a cap adjusting a curtain. Mr. Dallin. I knew him only as the quiet janitor who swept the bus stop every morning. We'd exchanged maybe 5 words in 3 years. I crossed the street, clutching the note. My knees trembled as I knocked. After a long pause, the door creaked open. Mr. Dallin's eyes were pale and kind, though clouded with age. "You shouldn't be out in the cold, Ms. Amara," he said softly. I held up the note. "Did you write this?" He shook his head. "No. But I knew it would reach you." Inside, his living room smelled of wood polish and old books. The shelves were lined with tiny glass vases, each holding a single dried flower. I recognized the style. They were from my shop years ago. He motioned for me to sit. "I've seen what's been happening," he said. "The nights they came. The things they said. You didn't deserve any of it." I stared at him, confused. "Why didn't you tell me?" He smiled faintly. "Because sometimes the truth speaks louder when it reveals itself." His words lingered in the air like a promise I didn't yet understand. When I left his house, the sky had turned orange with evening light. I looked back once and saw him standing at the window, watching over the street as if guarding something unseen. That night I lay awake again. The cameras, the note, the quiet man. It all tangled together in my mind. Somewhere in the middle of my worry, a thought surfaced, quiet but firm. Maybe the truth is already on my side. I just have to let it bloom. But I had no idea then how much more was yet to come, or how the footage I held could change everything I thought I knew about justice, forgiveness, and myself. The following morning, I woke to the sound of soft knocking. When I opened the door, there was no one there, only a small paper bag on the step. Inside were 2 fresh croissants and a note written in neat handwriting. "For your mornings. D." For the first time in weeks I smiled. It wasn't much, but kindness feels heavier when the world has forgotten it. I placed the croissants on a plate, brewed tea, and sat by the window where sunlight touched the rim of my cup. Across the street, I saw Mr. Dallin sweeping his porch, his movements slow and steady. Later that day, as I arranged carnations, a woman named Mila came in. She'd been one of my regulars once. Her daughter loved pink roses. She avoided my eyes at first but finally spoke. I heard about the shop wall. That was awful. I didn't believe what people said, but you know how gossip spreads." I forced a smile. "Rumors bloom faster than flowers." She hesitated. "Mrs. Greaves told everyone she saw strange men leaving your shop late at night. She even said one of them threatened her." My chest tightened. I wanted to laugh at how absurd it was, but anger boiled quietly beneath the surface. "That's not true," I said firmly. The only thing that's ever threatened her is her own imagination. After she left, I locked the door and checked the footage again. Hours of quiet nights, no strange visitors, only me watering plants or arranging displays. It was all there, proof of my innocence, but something in me still resisted sharing it. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. That evening I walked past Mrs. Greaves' house. Her curtains fluttered, and for a second I saw her eyes peeking through. Wave. She didn't wave back. When I returned home, the lights flickered once, then steadied. The hum of the camera above the door felt louder somehow, like it was waiting for something. I whispered, "If truth wants to speak, let it choose its time." But I didn't know that time was coming sooner than I thought. 2 days later, I found a crowd gathered at the community square. Posters hung on the notice board, my face printed in black and white. Above it were the words, "Beware of the woman behind the flowers." My hands went cold. The poster accused me of cheating customers, selling dead flowers, and hiding illegal dealings. My breath came short. It was signed anonymously, but the tone screamed one name, Mrs. Greaves. The crowd murmured as I approached. Some avoided my gaze. Others looked curious. I tore one poster down. "These are lies," I said quietly, but no one answered. Shame pressed down like thick fog. That night, I sat in my shop long after dark. The walls felt smaller. My husband's photograph hung near the counter. His smile soft, reassuring. I whispered, "Elias, what would you do?" The camera light blinked, a tiny pulse of life in the stillness. I thought of the footage, of how easily I could end all of this with one clip. But then I remembered Mr. Dallen's words. Let the truth reveal itself. I wasn't sure what he meant, but I trusted it. Maybe truth wasn't just about proof. It was about timing. At midnight there was a knock. I hesitated, heart racing. Through the window I saw Mrs. Greaves' son, the boy from the footage, standing in the rain. He looked nervous, holding something in his hand. I opened the door slightly. "What do you want?" He glanced over his shoulder. "Please." "I'm sorry." He held out a small flash drive. "It's all here. Mom doesn't know. I recorded her." Froze. "Recorded her." He nodded quickly. "She said she'd ruin you because you make her feel small. She told me to paint those words on your wall." I didn't know she meant it seriously. His voice cracked. "Please don't tell her I came." I stared at the flash drive in my palm. So small, yet so heavy. "Go home," I said softly. "I won't say a word." After he left, I locked the door and sat by the counter, the drive between my fingers. I didn't plug it in. Not yet. The truth was now doubled, mine and his, and I needed to choose how to carry it. Outside, thunder rumbled. Somewhere deep down, I felt the season of silence beginning to shift. The next morning I couldn't focus on anything. Every bouquet I arranged felt wrong, every color too bright or dull. The flash drive sat beside the cash register, like a secret whispering my name. I closed the shop early and went to see Mr. Dallen. His front door creaked open before I even knocked. "You look troubled," he said. I handed him the flash drive. "Her son gave me this. It has proof, recordings of her plotting everything." He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected it. "And what do you plan to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to show it to everyone. Another part wants to burn it and forget." He walked to his bookshelf and picked up a small glass vase holding a single withered rose. "Do you know why I keep these?" I shook my head. "They remind me that even dying things have beauty," he said. "Truth is like that. When it's revealed too soon, it can destroy. When it comes at the right time, it heals." His calmness made my anger melt a little. "How will I know when that time is?" "You'll feel it," he said simply. "It will arrive not to hurt, but to restore." When I was leaving, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small framed photo on his porch wall. It showed a young man standing proudly in front of my flower shop, though the sign above the door read something else. Dallen's Blooms. I stopped stunned. He must have noticed my gaze because he smiled. It was mine once. Before my eyes failed. I sold it to a kind young woman who loved flowers more than profit. My throat tightened. That woman was me. He nodded. And that's why I've been watching over it. Over you. I didn't know what to say. Gratitude, surprise, and awe tangled inside me. I felt small yet safe, as if someone had been silently protecting me all along. When I got home, I placed the flash drive beside the monitor. I didn't play it, not yet. Instead, I lit a candle and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle and rhythmic, washing the street clean. Somewhere beyond the sound of water and wind, I felt the first hint of peace returning. But deep down, I knew the storm hadn't finished its story. The next few days moved like the hush before a storm. I worked longer hours, filling every silence with the rustle of petals and the snip of scissors. Something inside me was changing. For months, I had let shame sit quietly beside me, but now I felt a strange steadiness growing. I started recording new footage each day, not to catch anyone, but to remember what kindness still looked like. The camera above the door blinked as I carried free bouquets to the hospital, helped Mrs. Hunt pick lavender, or handed bread to a stray cat. It was my way of keeping proof that gentleness still mattered. One afternoon, a small girl came to the shop. She held 2 coins and asked, "Can I buy a flower for my grandma?" I gave her a pink daisy and told her it was on the house. She smiled so wide that for a moment, all the hurt felt worth it. As she left, I noticed Mrs. Greaves across the street watching. Her expression was unreadable. Maybe she wondered why I still smiled. Maybe she wanted to know why I hadn't fought back yet. That night I finally plugged in the flash drive. The first file opened to a video. Mrs. Greaves sitting at her kitchen table, phone pressed to her ear. "Of course she's faking it," she said. "You think a woman like that earns honest money from flowers? Please. People love a pity story." Her laughter sliced through me. Another clip showed her instructing her son to paint my wall. "Make it dramatic," she said. "Everyone needs proof to believe gossip." I stopped the video halfway. My hands trembled, but my heart didn't race the same way anymore. I felt calm, almost sad for her. How empty must someone be to find joy in another's ruin? I backed up the footage on a new drive and placed it in my drawer. I whispered to myself, "When the time is right." Outside lightning flashed. The storm was coming, and I could feel its rhythm pulsing through every heartbeat. 2 mornings later, I walked into the shop to find an envelope taped to the door. My name was written in big letters. I opened it, expecting another cruel message, but inside was a single sentence. "Meet me at the old greenhouse tonight if you still believe in truth." I frowned. The handwriting was unfamiliar. For hours I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept circling back to the note. The old greenhouse sat behind the abandoned nursery at the edge of the neighborhood, a place people avoided since the roof half collapsed. By evening, curiosity outweighed fear. I closed the shop early, tucked the flash drive into my coat, and walked through the damp path toward the greenhouse. The air smelled of earth and rust. Broken glass crunched under my shoes. "Hello," called softly. A figure stepped out from the shadows, Mrs. Greaves' son. His face looked pale under the flickering streetlight. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I shouldn't be here," I said. He shook his head. "You need to see this." He handed me a small notebook. Inside were lists of names, neighbors, store owners, dates. Notes beside them read, "Spread story about Amara. Call her customer. Complain online." My stomach turned. She made people do this. She paid some, he said. Others just followed. Mom loves feeling powerful. He looked terrified, but his voice carried relief too. "I'm leaving tomorrow. I can't live under her lies anymore." Before I could answer, footsteps echoed outside. He stiffened. "She followed me," he hissed. We ducked behind a broken counter. Through the shattered door, Mrs. Greaves' voice sliced through the air. "I know you're here, Daniel. Come out." froze. He whispered, "Please don't tell her I helped you." When her footsteps faded, he slipped out a back door. I waited until the wind filled the silence again. The greenhouse smelled of dust and fear. I clutched the notebook to my chest and whispered, "Truth, please. Reveal yourself soon." That night I placed the notebook beside the flash drive. 2 pieces of proof, 2 seeds of truth. And still I waited for the right season. Morning sunlight filtered through my curtains, soft and golden. It felt strange that the world could look so peaceful while everything inside me buzzed with unease. I opened the shop as usual. Customers trickled in again, careful, uncertain, like deer approaching water. The rumor storm was slowly tiring out. But calm after chaos can be its own trap. At noon, Mrs. Greaves entered. Her perfume announced her before she spoke. "Good morning," she said sweetly, eyes scanning the room. "Business picking up again, I see." I nodded without smiling. "Can I help you?" She leaned close, lowering her voice. "You've been talking to my son." The air felt colder. "He came to me," I said simply. Her eyes narrowed. "Stay away from him. He's confused, and you're filling his head with nonsense." "I haven't said anything," I replied. "But perhaps your conscience has." Her face stiffened. "Careful, dear. People can only pity you for so long before they turn against you again." She turned sharply and left, the bell above the door ringing like a warning. As soon as she was gone, I exhaled shakily. My hands trembled as I adjusted a vase, and the flowers shivered as if sharing my nerves. That evening Mr. Dallin visited. "You look pale," he said. "Mrs. Greaves came today. She knows her son spoke to me." He nodded thoughtfully. "Fear makes truth restless. But don't let it rush you." I looked at him, frustration bubbling. "Everyone says wait, but how long can one woman wait while her name burns?" He smiled gently. "When fire finishes burning lies, only truth remains. You're closer than you think." Before leaving, he handed me a small parcel. "For when you decide it's time." Inside was a neatly labeled USB drive. "What's this?" I asked. "A backup," he said, "of everything your cameras ever saw." I stared at him in disbelief. "You have my footage." He smiled faintly. "I helped Elias install that system, remember? I built its copy server too. Your husband wanted it safe in case you ever needed proof." My heart swelled. For a moment I couldn't speak. "Then," he said softly, "maybe this is the right season after all." Outside, the first leaf of autumn drifted past the window, golden against the gray sky. Something inside me stirred like a door unlocking. I realized then that truth wasn't waiting anymore. It was knocking. I didn't sleep much that night. The air felt alive with something waiting to happen. I sat by the window, holding the USB drive Mr. Dallin gave me. The street outside was calm, lamps glowing against the mist. When morning came, I brewed tea and whispered to myself, "No more waiting." I opened the shop early and connected the drive to my computer. Hundreds of video files appeared, neatly labeled by date. I clicked through each, heart steady and strong. There was Mrs. Greaves shouting at her son outside my shop. There were the teens painting hateful words on my wall. There were the gossiping neighbors laughing on their porches. But there was also me, sweeping the front steps, giving away flowers, hugging an old customer who had lost her husband. The contrast was powerful. By midday, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to post the footage online. That would make me like them, using humiliation to feel power. I would show them the truth face to face. I called the neighborhood association office and asked if I could speak at the monthly meeting that weekend. The secretary hesitated but finally said, "We can give you 5 minutes, Mrs. Cole." 5 minutes to untangle months of lies. Didn't sound like much, but it was enough. Later, as I locked the shop, I saw Mrs. Greaves standing by her gate. She smiled tightly. "Evening, dear. I hear you've been very busy lately." "Just preparing," I said softly. "For what?" "For peace," I replied. Her smile faltered for the briefest moment before she turned away. I walked home with steady steps, my heart lighter than it had felt in months. That night, I laid out a bouquet of lilies on my kitchen table, white for truth. I would bring them to the meeting as my silent witness. The morning of the meeting arrived gray and cool. The hall at Maple Street was already filling up when I entered. People glanced my way, whispering. Some smiled awkwardly, others looked away. Mrs. Greaves stood near the front, wearing a royal blue dress and her usual confidence like armor. The chairman, Mr. Carver, called the meeting to order. They discussed road repairs, the annual fair, and maintenance fees. My hands trembled slightly as I held the bouquet, but my heartbeat was calm, a rhythm of purpose. When my name was called, I stood and walked to the front. The hall fell silent. "Good evening," I began. "I'm Amara Cole. Some of you know me as the florist at Rosewood Lane. Others may know me for less kind reasons." A few uneasy laughs rippled through the crowd. I continued. "For months, stories about me have circled through this neighborhood. Stories that hurt my name, my work, and my peace. I stayed silent because I hoped truth would find its way naturally. But silence can sometimes sound like guilt." I set the bouquet on the table. "These lilies represent truth, quiet but undeniable. And so is what I'm about to show you." I plugged in the USB drive to the projector Mr. Dallin had quietly set up earlier. The first clip appeared, Mrs. Greaves instructing the teens to vandalize my shop. The second, her laughing over the phone, calling me a fraud. The room erupted in gasps. Mrs. Greaves stood up. "This is nonsense. Lies." But the next clip showed her son confronting her, pleading, "Mom, please stop." The sound of her voice shouting back filled the room. Her words needed no explanation. When the video ended, silence swept over everyone. I looked at her, not with anger but sadness. "Mrs. Greaves, I don't hate you. I only wish you'd remembered that kindness spreads faster than cruelty." She didn't reply. Her face had gone pale, her eyes darting around as murmurs grew louder. I turned to the audience. "I don't want revenge. I only want peace to return to this community." Applause began softly, then spread. A few neighbors came up to hug me. For the first time in a long while I felt seen, not as a rumor but as a person again. Outside, the evening wind brushed against my cheeks. Mr. Dallin appeared beside me, smiling faintly. "That was the truth season, Amara." But something in his expression looked unsettled, as if he knew the story wasn't done yet. The next day felt lighter, like the world had exhaled. I walked through town and people greeted me warmly again. Even the air inside my shop smelled different, freer. By afternoon, Mrs. Greaves' blue car was gone from her driveway. Her curtains were drawn, and her mailbox overflowed with letters. Some neighbors whispered that she'd left to stay with her sister in another town. I wanted to believe it ended there. But peace can be tricky. It can hide what's coming next. That night, I sat in bed reading when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You think it's over. You should have left things buried." My stomach twisted. I went to the window and looked across the street. Mrs. Greaves' house was dark, but a faint shadow moved near her porch. The next morning, police cars lined our road. A crowd had gathered. Someone said, "Mrs. Greaves is missing." My knees felt weak. Mr. Dallin appeared beside me, his face grave. "They found her car by the river. Doors open. No one inside." Whispers spread fast. Some neighbors looked at me differently again, suspicion mixed with fear. "She humiliated her," someone murmured. "Maybe she wanted payback." My throat went dry. "No," I whispered to myself. "No, I didn't." That evening I sat in my shop alone. The flowers seemed to droop under the heavy silence. I replayed the footage, wondering if I missed something, any clue that could explain her disappearance. Then I saw it. A brief frame from the night after the meeting. Mrs. Greaves standing across the street, looking at my window. She wasn't angry. She looked frightened. as if she'd seen something I hadn't. My pulse quickened. Who was she looking at? And why did she seem so scared? Pressed pause. In the faint reflection on the glass door behind her, there was a tall figure standing in the dark, watching both of us. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath catching. It wasn't anyone I recognized. The storm that had been calm inside me for weeks began to stir again. The story wasn't over. Not yet. The police came the next morning. 2 officers stood in my doorway as the scent of fresh marigolds filled the air. "Mrs. Cole," one of them said politely. "We'd like to ask a few questions about Mrs. Greaves." My chest tightened. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Come in." They looked around the shop. Neat rows of flowers, ribbons, and faint traces of soil on the floor. It must have looked too peaceful for the kind of questions they were asking. "When was the last time you saw her?" "After the neighborhood meeting," I answered. "She was standing by her gate as I walked home." "That was 2 nights ago." The officer scribbled something down. "Did she seem upset?" I thought for a moment. More frightened than upset. Like she'd seen something she didn't understand. They exchanged a quick glance. "Frightened, you say?" "Yes," I said softly. "Why? Did something happen?" But they didn't answer. They thanked me, took my number, and left with polite nods. As soon as the door closed, I sank onto the stool behind the counter. My hands were cold. Outside, I could already see curtains shifting in nearby windows. They were watching again. Later that afternoon, I walked to the river path where her car had been found. The road was still wet from morning rain, the scent of mud heavy in the air. Police tape fluttered in the breeze. I looked out at the water, calm and dark. Something glimmered by the edge. Bent down. It was a gold locket, half buried in sand. Opened it. Inside was a tiny picture of Mrs. Greaves with her son, both smiling in better times. I held it tightly. "Where did you go?" I whispered. As I turned to leave, I felt a prickling sensation, that strange awareness of being watched. I glanced behind me. Far across the street, near the old post office, a tall figure in a gray coat stood still, facing me. When I blinked, he was gone. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the locket, or the figure in the gray coat. I placed the locket on my kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. I thought about Mr. Dallen's words. Let the truth reveal itself at the right time. But what if the truth was already moving faster than I could handle? Around midnight, I heard a sound outside. A faint shuffle near the fence. My heart jumped. I turned off the lights and peered through the curtain. Someone was walking slowly by my gate. I could barely make out his face, but the gray coat was unmistakable. Froze. Should I call the police? Or would they think I was trying to cover something up? The man paused, looked toward my window, and then, almost respectfully, placed something on the ground before walking away. When I finally gathered the courage to step outside, I found an envelope resting on my doorstep. Inside was a note written in shaky handwriting. "Not everything you see is meant for you. Ask Dallen about the river." No signature. My fingers trembled as I held the note. Who would write this? And why did it sound like a warning? By morning, my nerves were stretched thin. I went to find Mr. Dallen at his usual spot, the bench behind the old grocery store. He was feeding pigeons, moving slowly, almost thoughtfully. "Mr. Dallen," I said quietly. "I found something last night." He looked up, calm as ever. "You've been seeing the shadows, haven't you?" I hesitated. "Yes." "Who is that man in the gray coat?" He sighed. "He's been around since before you moved here. Used to work security for the old estate by the river. When the estate closed, he stayed behind. Some say he watches the neighborhood out of habit. Some say he's guarding something." "Guarding what?" His eyes met mine, filled with quiet weight. "The truth, maybe. Or a mistake." He picked up his cane and started walking away before I could ask more. That night I dreamed of water. Dark, wide, endless. And in the middle of it, a faint glimmer, like someone reaching out for help, just below the surface. When I woke up, my pillow was wet from tears I didn't remember crying. The following day, the police returned. Not for questions this time, but with a warrant to search my garden. Neighbors stood along the street, whispering as the officers moved through the flower beds, lifting pots and turning over soil. Every rustle of leaves sounded like an accusation. One officer pointed at the camera on the wall. "Is this the same system that recorded Mrs. Greaves?" "Yes," I said quietly. "We'll need to review the footage." They took the hard drive. My hands clenched around my apron. That security footage, the very thing that once saved me, now felt like it might destroy me. When they left, I sat in my garden, surrounded by broken stems and trampled petals. I wanted to cry, but something inside me held firm. If I was being pulled into the center of this storm, then I needed to understand why. That evening, I walked to Mr. Dallen's house. The windows were dark, curtains drawn. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still silence. Then I noticed something strange. A faint flicker of light in his backyard shed. I slipped around the fence and peeked through a crack. Inside, a single bulb hung from the ceiling. On the table beneath it were stacks of old photographs, letters, and, shockingly, printed images of my flower shop from different angles. My heart raced. What was he doing with all these? Then I heard a sound behind me. Footsteps on gravel. I turned sharply. Mr. Dallen stood there, holding a lantern. His expression was unreadable. "Why are you here, Amara?" he asked softly. I swallowed hard. "You tell me. Why do you have pictures of me? Why do you know so much about what's been happening?" He stepped closer. "Because you were never meant to live here alone." His words sent a chill through me. "What does that mean?" He sighed, his voice low and sad. "Some debts don't die with the people who owe them." Before I could ask what he meant, the wind blew the shed door open wider, revealing one last photograph pinned to the wall. Mrs. Greaves by the riverbank, and behind her, the same man in the gray coat. Mr. Dallen's gaze followed mine. "You've seen him too, haven't you?" "Yes," I whispered. "Who is he?" He looked down. "The man who built the cameras." A silence thick as fog hung between us. Then he said, "Amara, you need to see something before they erase it." Mr. Dallen led me back into the shed. The lantern flickered, painting our shadows across the walls. On the table lay an old desktop computer, the kind with a thick glass screen and humming tower. Dust floated through the air, catching the weak light like drifting ash. "This system," he said, tapping the monitor, "was built long before your husband installed his own. They're linked. Every camera in this street connects through one master hub." My mouth went dry. Why would anyone need that much coverage? He looked tired. "Because years ago something happened by the river. People wanted to forget. The cameras were a way to remember, and to guard against it ever happening again." He turned the screen toward me. A folder blinked. "Archive under Rivera 2008. My fingers trembled as I clicked it open. Rows of video thumbnails appeared. Grainy black and white frames of the same street, the same gardens, but younger somehow. One file was labeled Night Under 0417. Click. The footage showed a stormy night. Trees whipped in the wind. Then headlights appeared. A car swerved, crashed near the bridge. The image shook, and for a moment, a woman's scream echoed faintly through the static. Then nothing. I looked at him. "Who was she?" He sighed. "Mrs. Greaves's sister. She died that night. And your husband was the one who found her car first." The word struck me like cold rain. My husband. But he never told me that. He didn't want to. He blamed himself for not getting there sooner. I stared at the screen again, the river shimmering like a restless secret. Mr. Dallen placed a small hard drive in my hand. "This is the backup. Police never saw it. But someone has been trying to erase the original files. If they succeed, the truth will vanish." "Who?" I whispered. "The man in the gray coat. He used to monitor this network. He's cleaning it now, removing anyone connected to that night." He met my eyes. Including you. Chill ran through me. Why me? Because your husband made copies before he died. You live in the only house still connected to the old grid. The lantern flickered harder. Wind rattled the door. They'll come tonight, he said quietly. You must decide what to keep and what to release. Before I could answer, a loud knock slammed against the shed door. Mr. Dallin. It's the police. Open up. He froze. Too late, he murmured. The officers entered with flashlights, their beams slicing through the dimness. Mrs. Cole, one said sharply. We need both of you to come with us. We have new evidence related to Mrs. Greaves's case. My pulse thundered. What evidence? But they didn't reply. One of them unplugged the computer, the screen going black. Another took the hard drive from my hand. Outside, the street glowed blue from the patrol car lights. Neighbors stood behind fences, whispering. The air smelled of damp soil and fear. At the station they separated us. I sat alone in a narrow room, staring at my reflection in the one-way mirror. I remembered every rumor, every whisper. Now it all felt heavier. A detective finally entered. Mrs. Cole, we recovered part of the footage from your garden cameras, he said. It shows Mrs. Greaves entering your yard the night she disappeared. I shook my head. That's impossible. I didn't see her. He slid a still photo across the table. There she was, on my path, umbrella in hand, looking directly at the camera. Do you know what she wanted? No, I whispered. But she looked scared that night. Someone else was out there too. A man. The detective interrupted. We didn't see anyone else. That made no sense. I'd seen the reflection clearly. Unless someone had erased it. Hours later they let me go. Mr. Dallin was still being questioned. I walked home alone beneath heavy clouds. The silence of the street pressed against me. When I reached my gate, something caught my eye. My shop door was open. I stepped inside. Every bouquet lay scattered. Petals and stems covered the floor like fallen rainbows. And on the counter sat a small flash drive wrapped in tissue. A note beside it read, "You missed a file." I plugged it into my laptop, my heart hammering. One folder. Reverend. Opened it. The footage played. Mrs. Greaves standing in my garden, trembling. Please, she whispered to someone off camera. You promised no one would find out. Then she looked directly toward the lens, eyes wide with sudden terror. The screen blurred. A dark figure stepped forward, hand reaching out. Then static. The timestamp read the same night she vanished. I replayed it again and again, but each time, the face remained hidden in the blur. When I finally stopped, dawn had started to color the sky. I felt hollow, frightened, but more determined than ever. Whoever that man was, he wanted silence. But I was done being silent. By morning, the police announced that the search for Mrs. Greaves had new leads. Reporters appeared on the street. My shop was now a backdrop for every rumor imaginable. I kept the flash drive hidden inside a flower pot. Every customer's smile felt loaded with questions. That evening, as the sun set red over the rooftops, a soft knock came at my door. When I opened it, Mr. Dallin stood there, pale, weary but free. They released me, he said quietly. But they took everything from the shed. Except what you have. I hesitated. You knew she came to my garden that night. He nodded slowly. She wanted to confess. She thought if she told you the truth, you'd forgive her. Confess what? That her son wasn't the only one who hurt your shop. She planned it with him, out of anger, out of grief. But when she realized what it did to you, she wanted to make it right. Tears stung my eyes. Then why did she disappear? He looked toward the darkening sky. Because she wasn't alone when she came to see you. The words chilled me. The man in the gray coat. He nodded. He came to stop her. He's been cleaning the past, removing anyone who tries to open it again. My throat tightened. You knew this would happen. I tried to protect you, he said, voice breaking. But it's too big now. You must release the footage before he erases it all. Lightning flickered in the distance. Where is he now? Asked. Dallin's eyes glistened. Closer than you think. At that moment, a sound echoed from my backyard. Footsteps on gravel, steady and slow. The motion sensor light snapped on. Through the window I saw him. The tall figure in the gray coat, standing among the flowers, unmoving. I whispered, "He's here." Mr. Dallin stepped forward, gripping his cane like a weapon. "Go to the shop. Get the footage online. Now. What about you? I'll buy you time." I ran toward the back door, my pulse roaring in my ears. Behind me I heard Dallin shout, then the crash of breaking glass. I reached the shop, trembling, plugged in the flash drive, and opened the upload screen. The cursor blinked. Connect to network. Clicked yes. Side thunder cracked. The lights flickered once. I turned toward the window, and saw two silhouettes struggling in the garden. One fell. The other vanished into the darkness. Then the power went out. Chapter 19. The morning after the blackout felt like waking inside someone else's dream. Too quiet, too still, and far too bright. The neighborhood that once thrummed with whispers now sat hollow in the light, as if the night itself had stolen all sound. I sat on my porch with a mug of tea that had long gone cold, watching the empty street. The flowers in my front garden leaned, heavy with dew, unaware that their keeper was fighting the urge to crumble. News traveled faster than light in our little community. By sunrise, everyone knew something had happened at Mrs. Greaves' house. They just didn't know what. Some said she'd fallen ill and been taken away. Others swore they'd seen an ambulance in the dead of night. But no one mentioned the gray-coated man who'd stood by her gate before the power died, or how I'd heard his faint voice say, "It's time." I kept replaying that moment. The flicker of light, the sound of gravel under his shoes, the way Mr. Dallin's words from weeks ago now felt like a warning. The truth will reveal itself at the right time. By mid-morning, I saw two police cars parked near Mrs. Greaves' house. Officers went in and out, their radios crackling softly. When one approached me, his tone was polite but curious. "Ma'am, you live next door." I nodded, clutching my shawl tighter. "Yes. Heard some noise last night. Then the power went out." He scribbled notes. "Did you see anyone?" My breath caught. I thought of the gray coat, the silhouette that had moved like a ghost between us. But something in me hesitated, not out of fear but understanding. "No," I whispered. "Just darkness." He thanked me and walked off. My lie hung heavy in the morning air, but it felt necessary. Some truths, I was beginning to realize, needed space to unfold gently. That evening I received a knock on my door. It wasn't the police, it was the old man himself. Mr. Dallin looked frail. His eyes ringed with exhaustion. "They're asking questions," he said softly. "But I need you to stay calm. Nothing that happened last night was your fault." "What happened to her?" asked. He sighed, leaning on his cane. "She's gone, Amara. Left before dawn. I think she realized what was coming." My heart stilled. "Gone where?" "No one knows." He paused. "But she took her son with her. Sometimes guilt makes people run before the truth catches them." The truth. It was coming closer now. I could feel it pulsing beneath every breath. That night, I sat in my darkened shop and watched the flickering footage from the recovered camera. For the first time I saw it clearly. The vandalism, the whispers, the way everything connected back to one moment of jealousy and one woman's wounded pride. And beyond it all, the gray coat. He wasn't just any man. He'd been watching for far longer than I'd realized. The following days blurred together in a strange stillness. Customers trickled in, offering hesitant smiles and too careful words. I knew they'd heard. The rumors of Mrs. Greaves' sudden disappearance had replaced the gossip about me. For once, I was no longer the villain of their small-town tales. Yet peace didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence before a confession. Mr. Dallin visited again on the third morning. He looked paler than usual, his breath shallow. I brewed tea and insisted he sit. "You're hiding something," I said quietly. "Not from the police, from me." He didn't deny it. His fingers trembled slightly around the teacup. "You deserve to know. That security system in your house. I installed it." Froze. "What do you mean? You?" "Not my husband. I gave it to him," he said, voice hoarse. "Years ago. I used to own your shop, the old rose garden, before you renamed it. When your husband bought it, I made sure he had the means to protect it. He told me about you, how kind you were, how you reminded him that not all beauty is loud. After he passed, I kept an eye on you from across the street." A shiver ran through me. The quiet janitor who swept the sidewalks every morning had been my unseen guardian all along. "Why tell me now?" I whispered. "Because the man in the gray coat," he paused, coughing weakly. "He's my son." The air in the room shifted. My heart hammered so hard I thought he could hear it. "Your son. But..." "He came back when he heard the rumors," Dallin said. "He thought he could protect you by scaring Mrs. Greaves into stopping. He never meant to harm anyone. But when she turned the lies on him, things got complicated." I sat there speechless. The puzzle pieces rearranged themselves. The erased footage, the shadow figure, the night of the blackout. "He shut off the power," I murmured. "To stop her." Dallin nodded weakly. "And then he made sure the police would find nothing that could hurt you." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Why would he care that much?" Dallin smiled faintly. "Because you once gave him a rose when no one else did." I remembered, years ago, a quiet young man with kind eyes had come to buy a single white rose. I never saw him again. Till now. I didn't sleep that night. The weight of everything, the lies, the secrets, the kindnesses woven between them, pressed on my chest like a slow tide. Dawn came in shades of gold, slipping through the curtains like forgiveness. Mr. Dallin was taken to the hospital that morning. His heart had grown too weak. Before he left, he placed a small envelope on my counter. Inside was a faded photograph. My husband standing beside him in front of the flower shop. Written on the back were 6 words. "Truth doesn't shout. It blooms in silence." That afternoon, I finally did what I had been avoiding for weeks. I went through the full security archive, every day, every night. The gray-coated man appeared again and again, trimming weeds by my fence, placing packages at my door, quietly fixing the flickering porch light. Not a threat, a guardian. When the police came to question me again, I told them the truth. Not all of it, but enough to shift the story. Enough for peace. By sunset, the neighborhood gathered outside my shop, not with suspicion but remorse. They helped repaint the walls that once bore cruel words. Someone brought tea, another brought paintbrushes. Together they worked in silence. The garden looked new again, lighter, freer. And when the wind passed through, I almost heard Mr. Dallin's voice. Let the truth reveal itself. As the last brushstroke dried, I placed the photograph inside a small frame and hung it by the counter. "The Garden of Second Chances," I whispered, tracing the letters on the sign. For the first time in months I smiled, not because the pain had gone, but because I had learned what it meant to bloom again, quietly after the storm. A week passed before the silence of the neighborhood broke. The whispers that once condemned me now circled around something else. Guilt. People stopped pretending not to see me. They waved again, though their eyes carried the weight of unspoken apologies. One afternoon I returned from the hospital. Mr. Dallin's condition was fragile but stable, to find a small box left on my porch. Inside was a folded note and a tiny silver flash drive. No signature, only 3 words written in sharp, careful handwriting. "Please understand everything." I knew instantly whose hand it was, Mrs. Greaves. My pulse quickened. I locked the door behind me, made tea, and inserted the flash drive into my old laptop. The first video file opened to her face. She looked tired, far older than I'd ever seen her. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Amara, if you're watching this, it means I've gone. I don't expect forgiveness, only understanding. I let envy rot me from the inside. You reminded me of everything I wasn't. Kind, patient, loved. When people adored you, I couldn't stand it. I told lies because they made me feel powerful. But every rumor I spread came back like a curse. I watched my son crumble under my bitterness. When the gray-coated man came, I thought he was you getting revenge. I lashed out and I lost everything. She looked down, breathing hard. The night of the blackout, I left because I couldn't bear to face what I'd done. But I need you to know, I saw the footage before I erased part of it. I know who he was. And I know he wasn't your enemy. The truth belongs to you now. The screen went black. I sat motionless, her words sinking deep. The missing footage, she'd seen it. She'd erased it out of shame. But now, her confession had given it meaning again. That evening I walked outside. The sunset burned orange over the roofs, and children played down the street, the same street that once turned cold toward me. My heart steadied. I knew what I needed to do. It was time for the truth to bloom. 2 days later, I placed a sign outside the shop window. Community gathering, 6 p.m. tonight. A truth we all share. By twilight they came. Neighbors old and young, cautious but curious. The benches overflowed, and the air hummed with unease. Even the stray cats gathered near the fence, their eyes glinting like small witnesses. I stepped forward, my palms trembling. The scent of roses mixed with dust and fear. I know many of you heard stories about me, I began softly. I stayed silent because I thought silence was grace. But sometimes silence is mistaken for guilt. Few heads lowered. I'm not here to accuse anyone, I continued. Only to show what really happened, and what kindness looks like when it's tested. I turned the screen toward them, my old laptop connected to a small projector. The footage began to play. It showed everything. Me leaving bread at old Mrs. Quinn's doorstep, helping children plant marigolds, tending the community garden while others slept. Then came the vandalism. 2 boys in hooded sweatshirts, pausing as one hesitated, whispering, "She doesn't deserve this." The crowd gasped when the second boy turned, Mrs. Greaves' son. The final scene rolled. The man in the gray coat fixing my porch light before walking away into the night. His face clear, calm, and unmistakably kind. When the footage ended, there was silence. Not the cruel kind, but heavy with realization. Then one by one, people began to clap. Tentative at first, then full-hearted. A woman near the front wept openly. "I'm sorry," she said. "We all are." I nodded, tears stinging. "The garden will always be open," I said. "For anyone who wants to grow again." That night, I didn't just feel vindicated. Felt free. Word of the video spread fast. Within days, people from nearby neighborhoods visited the Garden of Second Chances, not to buy flowers but to talk about forgiveness, regret, and quiet courage. One afternoon, as I arranged lilies in a vase, the shop bell rang softly. A young man stood in the doorway, hat in hand. His eyes were familiar, the same kind ones from years ago. "I should have come sooner," he said. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry for what my mother did. For what I did." I set the flowers down gently. "You were just a boy," I said. He shook his head. "No, I was a coward. When I saw you help her even after everything, I couldn't understand how you didn't hate us. But Mr. Dallin told me, hate doesn't heal. Truth does." We stood there quietly for a long moment. Then he handed me a letter. "She wanted you to have this," he whispered. It was short, written in the same trembling script as before. "I left because I couldn't face what I'd become. But your grace taught me what love really means. If this letter reaches you, please plant something for me. Something that doesn't bloom fast. Something that learns patience." I folded it carefully, holding back tears. "I know just the thing," I said. That evening, I planted a single magnolia seedling at the edge of the garden. It would take years to bloom, but when it did, it would last through generations. The boy helped me dig the soil. As the sun dipped low, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Months passed, and the garden flourished again. The once empty paths now overflowed with laughter, color and life. I often caught myself smiling at strangers, the same people who once avoided my eyes. Forgiveness had rewritten the air we breathed. Mr. Dallen's health declined slowly, but he remained sharp. Every Friday, I brought him roses at the hospital. One afternoon, as I placed them in a vase, he reached for my hand. "You did it," he said, voice thin but steady. "You turned pain into beauty." I smiled through tears. "You planted the first seed." He laughed softly. "No, Amara. You did and watered it." When he passed a few weeks later, the entire neighborhood attended his memorial. I spoke last, holding the same photograph he'd given me. "He once said truth doesn't shout, it blooms in silence," I told them. "Let's keep blooming." Afterward, I returned to the shop, now radiant with color. The magnolia had begun to sprout, just a tiny bud pushing through the soil. I kneeled beside it, touching the earth gently. "I kept my promise," I whispered. The wind stirred the petals of nearby roses, and for a moment, I imagined all their voices. My husband's, Mrs. Greaves', Mr. Dallen's, blending into one quiet blessing. As the evening light spread over the shop sign, the garden of second chances, I realized the truth had finally done its work. Not through revenge, not through noise, but through patience, and a love strong enough to outlast rumor, time and fear. And for the first time the silence felt like home. This is my story. Thanks for watching.